Well, a disappointing defeat for Newcastle United at home to Fulham here today. And, you know, Newcastle in the past few months have been fantastic, there's no doubt about that. But today, you know, you have to look at that in isolation and say it was pretty poor. First half, nothing too much wrong with it, apart from Newcastle just didn't capitalise when they were fully on top in that match. Obviously they went 1-0 up through Jacob Murphy, but he couldn't add to it. He left the door ajar for Fulham, and then, you know, going into the hour mark, Newcastle was still in a commanding position, but they did not finish the game off. And obviously Fulham got back into it through Jimenez equalising at the Gallagher end, and then a couple of substitutes combining. Andreas' free kick was whipped in, and just the slightest of touch from Muniz to make it 2-1, and Newcastle just seemed shell-shocked after that and never looked like they were going to get back into the game after that point. So disappointing the way things just were allowed to slide away there. It was a missed opportunity. I don't think they'll need to be told that one, but ultimately going into that game against Arsenal now, if this is a blessing in disguise, we'll have to wait and see. Well, after a little bit more time to reflect after that, you know, today really, I think everyone went into it just wanting to get business done ahead of that game against Arsenal. But, you know, it was never going to be easy against the Fulham side who, you know, they're dangerous. They've already shown that at Newcastle this season once, winning 3-1 down at Craven Cottage. And this afternoon, you know, it was thrown away by Newcastle really when we look back at it. They were 1-0 up. They had opportunities to extend that lead. They let Fulham back into the game, and then, you know, even worse, let Fulham go ahead when, you know, the game potentially was just petering away from Newcastle. But look, lessons learned. I think no game is ever over in the Premier League. I think we should know that by now. But really, for Newcastle, the more I think of it, have they got their mind on that game against Arsenal? Is there a bit of complacency from that point of view? I don't know exactly the players. You know, we didn't get an opportunity to catch up with many players after the game. But I think really from what Eddie Howe said in his press conference, you know, he made no excuses. He wouldn't accept any, you know, energy, staleness. All them words were sort of put to him, and, you know, he basically dismissed them all. Probably the most interesting part of it for me was I asked him, you know, the window is still open, there's 48 hours to go. Can Newcastle do anything? He's already said no on Friday, but does this game change anything? Again, he said no in the press conference, just then basically saying that, you know, the situation seems to be set the way it is. Newcastle can't spend any more in this window. That's what he said after the game. So I'm passing on those words to you now. Even after this defeat, he didn't feel like anything could be changed. I mean, what could be changed? Well, they could potentially wheel and deal and move a player on and bring somebody else in, or look at loan deals. But, you know, that wasn't what seemed to be on Eddie Howe's mind in there. You know, he was more talking about players that could be coming back from injury, Harvey Barnes, Callum Wilson, players like that. So, yeah, interesting one. What does he do now? Does he make big changes? You know, this is a Newcastle team that won well last week at Southampton. The Bournemouth game, you know, everyone, you know, accepted that Bournemouth are a team in, you know, great form at the moment. But Newcastle today, you know, reverting to type. It was a bit like the West Ham game in some ways at home earlier in the season. But you look now at those defeats at home to Bournemouth and today, and that West Ham game, and yeah, has it cost Newcastle? Well, has it not? If you look at the league table, Newcastle could have pretty much had this Champions League place cemented by now, going into the real run-in. But here we are. They've been beaten today 2-1, and ultimately they've got a huge game on the horizon against Arsenal. So I think everybody has to keep their heads up, really, because that game is, you know, a cup final at stake. So we'll see how Newcastle recover from this. I don't think the negativity should choke anybody too much, but really, I think Newcastle now go into this game on Wednesday. Little bit of a reminder of how difficult things are, but ultimately still disappointing today, and Newcastle must bounce back.